everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never been here before, my name is Billy Dees, and we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. On the studio line with me today, I have an interview for you. Sara is on the line. Sara, welcome. So glad you are here.
Well, thank you so much, Billy, for having me. It's great.
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you a little bit about Sara. We're going to talk about a lot of things. She's a filmmaker. She focused on Andrew Cuomo. And there's a lot of what she did with that that's relating to the politics and the media now. So there's a lot that I can go a lot of directions with Sara. So she's pretty interesting. Sara Alessandrini. Let me try that again. Sara Alessandrini, correct?
Yes, that's good.
Awesome. All right. Well, hopefully it's close enough. Is an Italian filmmaker and a social commentator based in Los Angeles and creator of the docu-series This Is What New Yorkers Say.
And you can see here in the background.
What's that?
You can see here in the background.
There he is. And for the audio listeners, she just pointed to a little poster with about the docu-series This Is What New Yorkers Say. The series examines the resignation of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, exploring media coverage and conversations with everyday New Yorkers while raising broader questions about politics, society, and the public discourse. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with Sara. Through This Is What New Yorkers Say, Sara offers critical insights into how society engages with complex issues, questions the limits of movements like the Me Too movement. That's going to be interesting. In truly empowering people, how effective are they? And examines the consequences of a culture where due process is inconsistently applied. And it invites audiences to reflect more deeply on politics, media, and the narratives that shape our world. Okay, Sara, let me start with you. Okay. From Italy. Now you're here about 10 years, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I've been here in Los Angeles since 2015.
Okay. What made you come to the United States?
Well, I guess it was pure love.
Oh, yes?
Yeah. I know I'm a rare type of person. I was always in love with this country. So I never felt I really belonged in Italy. Just the culture, it just felt like for my personality. I love doing a lot of things, different jobs and growing. And Italy is more about, you pick one job, you keep that for the rest of your life, and you don't do multiple things at the same time. You finish studying when you finish university, and then you don't study anymore. So, and then you just enjoy life. So you work 9 to 5 and then you enjoy life. That was not me. I love really doing multiple jobs, jumping from one topic to the next one. I was studying engineering, then I went to study film because that was my main passion. Yeah. And then I studied business. So now I'm discovering I'm more interested in business and politics. It's been a passion of mine. And so now, I'm doing filmmaking, but I'm talking about politics, obviously, and society. So I have this kind of profile. And so this country was always a place where you can do everything. You can grow, you can have a career, it's different from Italy.
Oddly enough, I feel sometimes the people that are here don't appreciate that. They kind of take it for granted that, I was talking to a young woman about a year ago from the Ukraine. And I was asking her, are things really that bad in the United States? You hear so much about the United States. And she goes, this is Disneyland. And I'm not to say that the United States is perfect and all that stuff. Not at all. But I think there's a current swath of young folks these days that really don't appreciate the world that we're in. In your country, for example, all through Europe, within the last century, war, bombings, concentration camps, minefields. The United States hasn't had any of that. Not on the mainland.
Yeah. And even when people talk about women used to be in the kitchen and the men used to go to work, Italy never had that. Because in the 40s, there was World War II. So while the men were in war, women actually had to go and work. And then even after everybody was so poor, everything was destroyed. So women always had to work. So we never really enjoyed that moment where like women could just hang out at home and like cook or something. So even when people have that conversation here, like women back in the kitchen, we never even had that moment ever in history. So.
Okay. See, interesting perspectives. I just absolutely love this. Now, there is a swing, I would guess right now in Italy toward conservatism because you have Giorgia Meloni there, who certainly seems on the surface internationally anyway as being pretty conservative. Trying to get back to basics with politics. Do you have any opinions about that? I know you haven't been there, but obviously that's your homeland.
Yeah. It's my homeland. Everybody's there, but I haven't been to Italy actually in 8 years. But I mean, I still follow politics and I hear what people have to say. So yeah, I mean, Italy has been pretty bad, like in the past, I don't even know how many decades, like since 2008. So Italy never like got back from 2008. So there are a lot of like, it's hard to find jobs over there. And when there are jobs, obviously they're not well paid. There are a lot of like issues that are, because there are so many protection in Italy actually, because of like the rule to protect workers. But then it worked very well for a lot of people. And this is going to be a bigger conversation, which probably we shouldn't start this.
That's okay. No, we're good.
But like because of that, there was always so many protection for workers in the past years. But then obviously things changed. The market is different now. So now it's actually very hard for people to find jobs. So I can see also why putting too many protection for people actually can backfire. So that's where like here, I'm always like, I try to be kind of like that person because obviously I live in Los Angeles. All my friends are very much on the left, but I try to be kind of like that person in the center and say, don't glorify Europe too much because actually this is like this, even like healthcare. It's not as beautiful as people think it is. Sure. So I try to be that kind of person in the center trying to explain how like policies works and like what can actually can go wrong even when you have great intentions. So
sure. Well, but know, great intentions. You know, they say the path to hell, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's true. It's like, it's not just about being an incompetent person and being like an evil person. Like sometimes you have good intentions, but if you don't think like long term, you might not have good policies anyway. So, exactly. I mean, so Giorgia Meloni at the end, like she has to deal with a lot of those issues with like work related and like safety too, because like obviously like there is a lot of like crime, I guess, in Italy too. So a lot of people are not safe. Businesses, like even in my city, which is like a smaller city, which has always been fairly safe. But I see like people like posting all the time about someone like entered in their business, destroyed everything, stole everything. So there are a lot of issues like those too. Yeah. So it's not really about the big topics that she has to deal with, like abortion, because that's been pretty much settled in Italy.
Okay.
But she has to deal with that kind of like those issues mainly. So I don't have an issue with her, honestly. And it's nice to see a change every now and then. So
absolutely. Yeah, well, that's interesting stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, there's all kinds of stuff I could talk to you about. Okay. I checked out a good part of your docu-series. You may not remember on PBS here in the United States, there was this thing called Frontline. And it kind of reminded me of, you know, there's lots of news clips interspersed with, commentary, the voiceovers coming in. And then when things get serious, you have the low tones coming in. I noticed that. So it's really good stuff, really good stuff. And I would recommend checking it out, even though the interest in Cuomo may not have been what it was a few years ago. I think you cover a pretty good gamut of things about the media in general and how that was handled. And this was, during COVID, so everybody's kind of locked down, and you had a little pressure cooker there. And for a while, he was the media darling. Okay, he was. He could do no wrong. He's this charming bachelor, and he's got this nice house. And then all of a sudden, the accusations start. So kind of let's just kind of start there. What about that metamorphosis do you find intriguing? Because you spent a lot of time putting this together. It's a multi-part docu-series. You spent a lot of time on this. What was so intriguing about that?
Well, multiple levels, obviously. And first, so let me just explain for your audience.
Sure.
So it's 5-episode series. The first one is the one where it tells you the full story of what happened. So the news clips, the headlines with the voiceover explain you the story, not just until he resigned, but also what happened in the years later. So until he actually ran for mayor. So that's pretty much the end when he announced he was running for mayor. And then you go in the other episodes where it's the conversations with New Yorkers, where they go from one topic to the next about was Cuomo, what their opinion about Cuomo in general, the media, the situation, the accusations, the Me Too movement, etc. Mm-hmm. So what intrigued me while I was watching the story, and I just liked the way he was talking about government in general. So like I just started listening to what he was saying. I was following New York politics at that point. It was during COVID.
Yeah.
But what really drew me to this was like seeing, and this has been an evolution because obviously I started filming the documentary, the interviews, a couple of months after he resigned, 2 or 3 months later. So yeah, I started this in 2021 and I released it in June of this year. So obviously this was like 4 years of work. And so it was the evolution, obviously. Like I learned a lot of things, let's say that. But it was really like seeing what really I couldn't stand was seeing how people go, what you said, go from loving someone, believing the person is amazing, and then suddenly, just because someone said something, an accusation, the media said something, then you turn your back at that person and you change your opinion drastically of that person. You don't even give them a chance to you do not even look at the facts, question what happened, what was happening. Are people saying the truth? Are we exaggerating things? Because even if everything that he was accused of is the truth, that still doesn't mean because these accusations, if you look at them, they're not. It's like he's not accused of being raped or anything like that much. Sure. It's mainly making people feel uncomfortable, and each accusation is different. Like some people are saying he said something in public and I felt uncomfortable. That's still not the same thing as like grabbing someone's breast as another accusation. So we have to put things into perspective. And I think we're losing that perspective just because someone said something that becomes like the biggest thing ever. And then we forget about that. We stay on that for like a week, 2 weeks, 1 month. And then there is the next biggest thing. And then it's like, we are getting manipulated here because it's so easy for people to be manipulated because if you always feel that outrage, then like you cannot really think rationally about topics. And you jump from one to the next one, like that's not the adult way of living life too. Like it's okay for like if you're 15 years old, but now like we're getting into this infantilization of society. And so that was pretty much what really made me feel like I have to do this. And I want to hear what New Yorkers really have to say because also the media was portraying certain type of New Yorkers, not all the voices. So I wanted to hear what really people felt. So,
They say you have no rights in the court of public opinion. When you were interviewing these people and meeting them, I don't know, it's kind of hard to gauge and I don't want to give away the documentary, but did you feel that the public perception, what a lot of them were saying, was it accurate or was it more reflective of how the media was presenting it?
I mean, there are different people in the documentary, and I think they're all like very deep thinkers. Like the conversation is never like sound bites. It's actually like, I don't know what is like 12, 13 interviews, but they're like very deep interviews. So then we end up talking about like the bigger topics. So I mean, I feel that even those people don't know all the facts of the situation. That's why originally this started as a feature documentary, which I released. I went to festivals in 2022. And after going through that process, I was like, something is still missing here because there was no archival footage in the original movie. And so it was interesting still see what people think, and people could follow it, but the people still missed actually the facts, what really happened, what the media was saying, and what's the counter to what the media was saying. Mm-hmm. And also, so that's like, to me, was the interesting part when I was making the first episode with the archival footage. You also see with the media, the first part, it's all very major outlets, like New York Times, CNN, like all the big outlets are telling, like, is the footage that I'm using. And I didn't do on purpose. Just like, even for me to find the clips, it was harder for the latest part. So when, like, he would sue someone or like sue something, he would go to court. Maybe when he sues someone, then that the main outlet report on that. But then when he wins on those, the major outlets are not reporting it. And so you see the footage that I used, it's like from very minor local outlets sometimes. And that was hard for me because when there was something bad to say about him, all the major outlets were reporting. But when actually he was winning or something that was like on his side, they would not report it, or it would just be minor. And so for me, living in Los Angeles, I saw also what kind of information would arrive to people that are not in New York. But even when I talked to people in New York, sometimes they didn't know as much detail as I knew about those facts. Again, because if it's not the New York Times reporting, many people don't see that. So, yeah, that was interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting. You talk about one side versus the other. Well, you know, and I don't necessarily mean innocent versus guilty, but there's a political, well, I'll put it this way. I'm of a certain age, as I say. I remember back in Reagan America, and there were conservatives and liberals then. All right. But they all lived in the same universe. They were all playing by the same rules of physics. You know, up was up, down was down. And everybody had maybe different opinions, but they were in the same universe. Now, everybody is playing by different rules of physics. Everybody's not only entitled to their opinion, they're entitled to their own facts. You're either for me or you're against me. And I think it's very harmful for society at large to be viewing things through those kinds of filters, because there is no common reality anymore, let alone a place where you can agree. And you asked the question about is it possible to have a nuanced conversation? I'm going to say at this time, almost impossible. Do you have any comments on that, for not only as you made the documentary, but as you've observed our society anyway here in the United States over the last 10 years? Because over the last 10 years is when it's gotten the worst. It was always coming on in the last 15 years, but that 2016 election and beyond, something radically started to change. I don't know what it is. What was your perception of that?
I mean, like I have a lot of opinions on this topic too, because also making this kind of documentary, I feel like I put myself in the middle of this too, because I live in Los Angeles. A lot of my friends are maybe very much to the left, but I've experienced, especially in the last few years, even if you have the same beliefs, even if the bigger picture, you have the same beliefs, but you think in a different way how to achieve certain outcomes. It's very difficult to have that conversation because, it's really, if you don't see it exactly as I see it, then you're the enemy. Like the other day was my birthday, and a friend of mine, even from Italy, was saying that I look like I'm a Republican now. Just because I'm questioning things and I don't take everything for granted. Yeah. Just because, as I am saying, I see how I'm not against. Putting more protection for people, workplace, housing, and everything. But I can see also from my lived experience in Italy how those protection didn't bring the outcome that you believed. So now that I'm here and I'm seeing different system, I'm always questioning: is this way of doing it? Is this the right way? In the past, I was told it was the right way, but maybe it's not anymore. And so I'm always questioning those things, and by seeing different countries, obviously you have a different perspective, a bigger picture. But I could see how when I try to approach this kind of conversation with certain people, sounds like I'm a Trump supporter just because I'm questioning certain things. And that's very bizarre. That's not how this country, any society should be, where like you cannot question even the basic things that you're saying, like whatever it's biology or other things. Okay, we know there is a standard setting, and then we can talk about the rest. But the basic facts, those should be the same facts, and then you can have your opinions. But yeah, now it's very hard to have a conversation. And I've seen also, even making this documentary, honestly, and now that like Zohran Mamdani became the mayor, and my docu-series is kind of defending Cuomo, and I'm very much supporting Cuomo. So, but people that have known me for years, they have seen me doing this documentary, they knew about this, they've seen it before. But I feel like even since Zohran Mamdani actually like started running for mayor, a lot of people are dealing with me in a different way, kind of like not even like congratulating with me when my series was out, like people that I was very close. So there is always that kind of like coldness that I'm seeing when the same topic was not controversial a year ago, but now that a lot of people are supporting Mamdani and socialism, and Cuomo also, like during this campaign, a lot of people felt he was like Trump when he was always the enemy of Trump. So it's like we live like in a very parallel reality. It's really hard to say. Like
that's a good term, a parallel universe, an alternate reality, for sure. And I think it's a dangerous time in that regard. We've always had our divisions in this country, and I'm sure worldwide we've had disagreements. But there was a common reality that everybody agreed upon, and that is changing. And I think that's not good. You talk about due process and the limits of the Me Too movement and any type of movement. Let's start with due process first, and that not being administered equally. As a newcomer, let's say, to this country, what do you think the problems are with due process?
I mean, well, first, like even being a woman, obviously, I want women to be believed when they make accusations. I want the system to support women and all kinds of minority, all kinds of people, everybody.
Sure.
But even their due process for a woman should be, okay, I believe you enough to do the investigation.
Yes.
Not to the point where, like, even if the investigation proved you wrong or didn't give me the facts, the other person is still guilty. Mm-hmm. That's not fair. It's not fair for women. It's not fair for anyone, because eventually you get to a point where if the smallest thing becomes sexual harassment, then people stop believing it, and then we go to a point again where women are not believed.
Exactly.
So I think it's very important to have a system in place, listen to, your story, listen to the facts, and then do the investigation. But I see a lot of people want to bypass the law. And it's funny to me that the people, like I'm talking about the people on the left, they always complain about Trump not respecting the law, but then they're the same. They're like, the law says something, this person didn't win a lawsuit, but the person is still guilty because the system is rigged. So you're exactly the same person. You're criticizing the other side for not supporting the justice system, but you're doing the same. And so that's where I want people to understand their own bias, not just pointing the fingers to other people, but also understand that they are also part of the problem. Like we all are part of the problem too. And even if there are corrupted like politicians, we're still part of the problems, because how those get elected, it's part of the, like, I see a lot like in this election with Mamdani, like he has been saying a lot of things that you actually, if you know the facts, either don't make sense or they just tell you one part of the story, and that's not how the economy works, that's not how business works. But people don't care about those facts. So they just want to believe that he's the good guy and everybody else is the evil guy. And so there is that binary place where, like, okay, you're a white man, politician, you don't deserve due process. This other person is a person of color, now you deserve due process more than everybody else. And obviously there are reasons why people feel like they have to give more due process or more of a something to a certain population, but that's not how you achieve a fair society. You achieve a fair society when everybody's equally treated.
Yes.
So, yeah.
You know, a lot of these movements, and we'll stick with the Me Too movement as an example, they start relatively innocuous. And I agree with you that the original intent was accusations are taken seriously, not necessarily that someone is tried and convicted based upon an accusation. And that did happen a lot and does happen a lot. You know, let's say, for example, there's a big city, there's a high-ranking politician there. He's very powerful. He gets accused by a drug-addicted woman. Okay. So those things would get dismissed. Oh, come on. She's on drugs, you know. And these things would get dismissed. And the fact of the matter is that predators often pick on people who are, in a situation where they're not going to be believed. They're not going to be, they'd have no power of their own to defend themselves. So I think in those situations, most people understood that. It did move to trying and convicting people based upon an accusation, which is one facet of what went wrong with it. And I'll tell you what another one is. Like I said, these movements start off with something that you can understand. Just like a bill in Congress. I might start a bill that says, feed the babies, right? Who would want to be against a bill that says feed the babies? But then I stick little things in there. I stick little pork things for myself. I stick little, all my buddies that donated to my campaign, they get contracts and da-da-da. And Sarah comes along and says, well, I'm not voting for that. And what do I say? Well, Sarah doesn't want to feed hungry babies. And all of a sudden you're on the defense. Okay. And that's what happens with these Me Too movements and a lot of others. They get very big. They could become political causes. And the next thing you know, they have a bunch of subcategories. They have a bunch of other little political things that they want to push along. And if you dare to say, well, wait a minute, I that's not what I agreed to. Well, then again, you're pro-rape. Okay, you don't care about women. And you're on the defense. And this has happened with so many movements that I think had a legitimate, like I said, with accusations not being believed by poor people or something like that, that had a legitimate thing, but it turns into something that is going to do more harm than good. Is that something you've observed as well?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm also questioning, because it's not only that we're just assuming people are guilty based on who they are and everything, but also we're lowering the standard or the definition of what sexual harassment is and all of that. And that to me, I was thinking the other day, because at a certain point, obviously there is, if you hear the stories, and I don't know if you watched that part of the documentary, it was the episode 4, people are talking about obviously very serious stories about sexual harassment and rape. So the people in the documentary also talk about their personal experiences with that. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, now we cannot say that the situation now is much worse than it was 30 years ago. And
sure,
I think,
of course.
And I think, obviously, there are always problems. This will always exist. It's not something, we have solved it, now we move on. Obviously, it's never going to be like that. But at the same time, we need to be intellectually honest to say that things have improved compared to many years ago. And we cannot act as sexual harassment or racism is worse now than it ever was. But there are people that are saying that in society. And even when people talk about immigration, and with my friends on the left that are talking about how much there is hate towards immigrants. I have a lot of friends that are also Trump supporters, and we talk about everything normally. We love each other anyway. And even if we have different opinions, I know a lot of friends of mine that are Republican, they hate Cuomo, but they love that I'm doing this project, obviously. But that's the thing. Even with immigrants, just because you're raising some points doesn't mean that you're racist or you hate immigrants.
Exactly.
And you should be able to question laws and everything. So I always try to be that person, kind of trying to bring everything in the middle. Yeah. But I'm also questioning now that we've gotten to a point, and now the Me Too movement is not as famous as it was a few years ago, but still an industry was built around it.
Yes.
So when you have an industry, there are a lot of people that are like making they're like lawyers, obviously making a livelihood with like sexual harassment cases. But at a certain point, when the industry is so big, then also means like you still need customers. So, but how if the society gets better and there are not as many issues as there were like years ago, but the industry keeps growing, then you need to lower the bar for what is sexual harassment. And so I see here, even not just about sexual harassment in general, like in Los Angeles, there are a lot of protection for workers, but even like very small things that a reasonable person would not even, like, you know, how the judge, when you go to a judge and you have to, the decision is based on the reasonable person. But now in the workplace, and I follow a lot of like, employment lawyers talking about law in the workplace, like it looks like the bar has been lowered so much that just because you feel something is something, then you're right. I remember like I was talking to the HR of the company because we had the company I was working before, and someone was complaining that some of us were yelling at her. And I said to the HR, there are cameras everywhere. You can see that no one yelled at her. And the HR told me, well, in California, it just matters what she feels. Even if someone watches the footage and you can see that you're not yelling at her, if she perceives it as you are yelling at her, then she's right. And at a certain point, like, what kind of society are we building if that is the standard? We're like, whatever you're feeling is right, and people are making money out of that because then you can sue a company because of that. If you don't take your 10 minutes break, like the company, I think these lawyers, company saying you have to police and make sure that people are taking their 10 minutes break because otherwise they can sue you and they're going to win. Not just because you block them from taking the break. You can say, take it whenever you want. But if they don't take it, they can use it against you, even if you allow them to do it. And that's ridiculous. Like, that's not how you can set up a fair society. So there are all these layers that need to be discussed.
Yeah. These odd circumstances that you describe, I think, you talk about some people perceive you as a Trump supporter and this and that. I'll tell you what's happened here. I honestly believe there's radicalism on the right and the left. Okay, no question there is. But right now, if we had a crazy meter, okay, a little meter like this that indicated crazy, the needle would go into the red more often with liberals, and that is what really, in my opinion, what won Trump the election. They said, yeah, Trump is crazy, but he's not that crazy. Okay. The left has moved so far to the left and out the window. People that were once moderates are now considered right wing. JFK, one of our most popular presidents, was considered a progressive and was considered a Democrat. Would not hold up at all today. Not in the slightest bit as a liberal. What you were saying about the interview about the immigrants, and then I'll hand this back to you to respond. Another Kennedy, not related, Senator John Kennedy, who's Republican in, I believe it's Louisiana. He came up with a good analogy about the border, and he was talking about securing the border. And he said, when you go to bed at night, you lock your door, not because you hate everybody in the world, but because you don't want somebody to come in your house that you don't know. I think that is the most common sense analogy that I think most people have. And with the left, they turn it into, well, you don't like immigration. It has nothing to do with immigration in terms of legal, which is a distinction that the left hardly ever makes, but it has to do with just anybody being able to run across the border. Okay. And this type of crazy is becoming normalized. Like you said, if you feel insulted, you were insulted. Is there going to be a turning point? where common sense starts to come back into the picture. I'm not sure. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I know. I'm feeling very discouraged too lately. And I mean, I live in Los Angeles, so like, let's say 95% of my friends are obviously very liberal or like very much to the left. So obviously that needle in my life is very much the crazies are on the left. The people that I know that are Trump supporter, they're like very normal people that like you can agree, disagree with what they have to say, but they're not crazy people. They're not like people that hate you or something.
Sure.
And having immigration laws should not be controversial. That should not be controversial. Every country has immigration laws. So it shouldn't be something where you're arguing, like you can argue what policies, how to make the H-1B visa, how to make the other, like the refugee visa process. You can argue on that. You shouldn't be arguing whether there should be laws or not. Or like we should have open border, anyone can walk in. Like that should not even be part of the conversation because no country in the world is set that way. So you could say, well, maybe we can be the first one, maybe, but it's that should not even be part of the picture.
Yes.
But yeah, even Cuomo in this, like he was always a crazy progressive for many years, and now suddenly he became the moderate candidate because things went so much to the left that even that's where like they are hijacking the left. The socialist part of the party, let's say. And to me, there should be different parties anyway, because the socialism and the regular Democrats, they want different things. Because the DSA, for example, that branch, they don't want capitalism. They're not like for capitalism with a safety net. They're saying on their website, they're against like capitalism in all its forms. So it is a turning point. It is a turning point. And it was interesting these days with what happened with Venezuela, for sure, because people felt that there was more favor for Trump in the last polls, that people would, like the left would have more, like it would be better for the left for the midterms. But now that this happened and you can see some of that craziness, I think like the left got a big hit, like it got hit pretty badly now that this happened in the Venezuela, because even in New York, there are people protesting for Maduro, and it's a big conversation, and I see how people are dealing with that in Europe too. So, but it's interesting. You can say that's against international law. You can say it's against the Constitution, and that's a conversation that it's important to have, obviously. Sure. But if you argue that you should free Maduro because he was the legit president, then that's a separate level. And people have been doing those protests in New York, in Italy too, and they're clashing with people that are from Venezuela. So you can have all your conversation. And I believe that the long term is more important. So maybe to focus on your current action, not on the short term benefit, but on the long term. And I believe self-determination of people is important.
Yes.
But when people are like struggling for 27 years, all this is secondary at a certain point. And so it cannot be that like your hate for America is more important than what these people are feeling. And so just listen to what these people are saying. And obviously not everybody is celebrating. There is never a population that agrees 100%. But when you see all these people and you're seeing a lot of clashes, and so that shows even Mamdani, he was like posting for the release of Maduro, the president, and everybody's like, so the Venezuelan community in New York probably is feeling like, okay, this guy is not for the people as he claims he is, but just, and also because there is, Maduro is for socialism, so they have to save their face by saving a socialist regime. But you can see where like, okay, you were never for the people, you were for whatever was trendy. And I'm gonna say this thing in Italy that was like horrible. So the main union, the biggest union in Italy was doing a protest for Maduro. And they had like these people that are like in their 70s. They're not like young people. So they were like protesting to free Maduro and everything. And some Venezuelan people clash with them and say, what are you doing? Like, this is great. He's a dictator. We prefer that this happen. And these people, they were saying, go to school, you have to study more, and you're like you're selling out your country. Like these Italian people to people from Venezuela. And these are people from the left telling this guy that he's a traitor of his own country, and then he was running away from his country, and he should run away from Italy too. It's like, I thought you were the party that was for people, for loving, accepting immigrants, but is it only when they match your narrative? So when they have a different opinion from you, that then you show your true colors. So that's where I stopped believing, just because someone is on the left claiming good like values doesn't mean necessarily that's what they believe. So it's interesting to see this kind of situation. And I think this was was very bad for the left, because all the people are celebrating and they're so focused on like those details.
Yes. Well, there's a saying that, well, I'm probably sure you've heard it. When in Rome, you do as the Romans do. And it refers to assimilation. So when you go somewhere, you take on that culture, and you come to America, let's say, for the purpose of working hard, succeeding, and doing all these things. And somehow that got twisted to anybody can just run across and get entitlements. It confuses what the idea of compassion really is. It really does. It confuses that, and it does it deliberately. And I don't know exactly. It's mostly Democrats, although I got to tell you, the issue with the border has been politicized for the last 30 or 40 years since Reagan. So it's always been, a political issue. And like you said, it should never have been that way. Yeah. We talked about Giorgia Meloni. She, from what I understand, is planning on clamping down on some of the illegal immigration into Italy. Is that true? Is that how you understand it?
I mean, it's hard to say, because at the end, like, they talk a lot, but the law in Italy is very difficult. It's not like here you have common law, right? And so it's much more flexible than the one that you have over there. So you write the laws, but it's very difficult. Like you pass them, and just to write them in a specific way, they just keep putting patches over patches and never fixing the system.
Yes.
So it's good to say stuff, but then I don't know how much change they can really do. And I think also part of the issue in Italy, like they don't care that much for the law. So even the police is like, for all this kind of situation, crime, whether related to immigration or not in general, like there is not that much. You cannot really trust the police to do that kind of job. And, there are a lot of situations everybody hears about, pickpocketing. Like there are people that are like stationed there in squares and doing that every day. Is it possible that the police is never doing anything to fix those issues? So it's very hard to say if actually it's going to be changed. Obviously, something need to change. And obviously, in Italy, you also have like people coming with the boat. So there is that situation. And Italy, like very often, it's not even the country where they end up staying. Very often they go to Italy and then they move to other countries like Germany, that is like better for immigrants. But I have to say, like, I always tell like my friend here, like, people say that Americans hate immigrants, but there is much more integration in this country than there is in Italy, in Europe in general. Like, people end up like what you were talking about, assimilation. They don't assimilate and they create their own communities. And then, like, you see even like in France, then there is resentment. And so then some people become even terrorists. That happened in the past too, where like people from like poor communities, because there is no integration, they're not part of the society. So you're really not helping anyone to accept unlimited amount of people without regulation, without allowing the system to actually work for everybody, not just for the American people. Obviously, you're not doing that.
Great stuff. I'm going to round this up with two questions. The first one is, let's say, a negative one, a pessimistic one. All right. You have an international field that I certainly don't, because you're from Italy, and I'm sure you've understand Europe, and certainly modern Europe, a lot better than I do. And now that you're in the United States, you have this view. You hear the news, like you were talking about what we did in Venezuela. And I know a lot of people are saying it's all about the oil. It's all about the oil. It's all about the oil. Okay. It is, but not for the reason that people think. There's a lot of people right now that say it wasn't about us taking the oil for money, but it was keeping it away from China. And if you look at the talk about Greenland right now, there is a movement of people that are quietly saying in the background that our government is preparing for the day that a global conflict happens. Okay. And securing oil is one of the big ones. Do you feel that there is a global conflict looming? Is there a black swan event that is due to happen?
Like that this country is creating, or that other countries are creating?
I think the implication is it's coming whether we want it or not. And it's time to get ready.
I mean, these days I had some conversation with people because here, yeah, I mean, everybody talks about the oil, but also people talk about imperialism. But in Europe, the conversation is mainly about the international law that this country broke by doing the Venezuela part. And so people think that because he did this, then everybody else, like Putin, will feel he can do this and he can do that. But I feel it's the opposite, because that's the thing. Like, international law was not respected by countries. There are a lot of people in the world that don't have any morals. Like, there are a lot of bad people in the world. So it's not that they are following the international law because they're nice people and they have people in integrity. It's because they're afraid of consequences. So for me, Trump doing that to Venezuela, it's showing I don't care about public opinion. I don't care about the international law. If I feel like something is the right thing to do, for whatever reason it is, I'll do it. So I think that actually prevents people like Putin or like China or like Iran to actually do something bigger. So I feel there is that opportunity, like that possibility that like other countries will start conflicts like World War III or something like that. I think that's a big thing that can happen for sure. And that's why we have to be conscious how we live our lives, knowing that things can happen. Like, people who have been living like in this, like even Europeans, besides like Yugoslavia, but we didn't have major conflict in the past. I mean, we had like terrorism from the left too in Italy for like many decades. But since the 90s, it's been pretty quiet in general, but was never the case in Europe. It was never the case in the world. There have always been wars. So I think we all need to be prepared that something like that happens. And so, yeah, I think something might be looming. And that's where maybe when people like are so much against this country, it's like, okay, if you have to choose on which side to be, do you prefer being with America or do you prefer to be with Putin? Because yeah, you can criticize this country as much as you want, but at the end of the day, you probably want to be with this country if something happens. So
I would agree. Like I said, I was never a rah America's always right. I was never one of those kind of people. But I do agree with a lot of the Reagan principles in that we are the last guard. If we go down, who else is going to protect freedom? I mean, there just isn't anybody who is either willing or wants to do it or is capable. There just isn't. And
we're also victims of this freedom because that's like we had so much well-being in the past years, and now we take everything for granted.
Yes.
And so that's where it's easy to criticize this country, and this country doesn't do everything right. Sure. But at the same time, your well-being, it is because also thanks to this country, or to the Western values. So if you're so willing to sell your values to the values of other countries that don't have the same well-being, then don't be surprised when your well-being is taken away. So
great points. Okay, the positive note. The same background that you have. You have an international field that I don't have. On the optimistic side, do you think there is a common humanity that all people share and that there is hope for the future?
I don't know if I'm that positive in general. I'm usually the negative one, always seeing, like, not seeing the negative, but try to be realistic about like how faulty it is the human soul, and that's why we have the decision that we take. We have to understand that whatever you do, whatever system you pick, you have to take into account that the human soul is not that beautiful all the time, and there will always be bad people. So yeah, I'm a realistic type. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I would agree that the dark side of humanity, I mean, if you really want to get negative here, when you talk about the origins of human beings going back 100, 150,000 years, when they say they found tools, what they meant is they found weapons. And from the very earliest days, we've been coming up with creative ways to bash in each other's heads. That's pretty much the human condition.
Yeah.
And I think, though, that we can do better. I think that I've had the privilege of working around some nonprofits here in Ohio. That's where I'm from. And there's people who volunteer and work hard and even take jobs helping people. They could make more in the private sector with all the degrees and everything they have, but they take these jobs that pay lesser because they really want to help people. And I've been around those people, and I got to tell you, there is an energy around them that is very uplifting. When you go home after you've spent the day with those folks, you feel better about the human condition. And I wish more people had that experience. I think it does exist. But I would agree that there is a dark side that we sometimes pretend doesn't exist with our human tendencies.
Yeah. Okay. And I actually work in no-profits here in Los Angeles, and they have the opposite experience that's where, like, I don't feel that much hope, because I see people that also do the nice thing, like volunteering. They end up doing that for power. And maybe it's because it's Los Angeles, maybe because I'm in the art, like in the industry, it's like art related. So the people that volunteer for organization, they do it because it makes them feel good, and they often want to bully other. So it's very crazy that. So, and I've seen, like, there are a lot of, like, wonderful people, and that part of the conversation that I don't like the left versus the right, how the left talks about the right, because the left think they're the good ones because they want government to take care of everybody. The right is not against taking care of people who need it, like poor people. They're just saying it should not be the job of the government, and other, like the church, should step in, the community should step in. So it's not that the people on the left are saying we don't care about people. The people on the right are actually the ones that are going to step up when something bad happens, and they're going to be there for you. And I've seen actually the opposite with people on the left, that when someone needed help, they would not step up and, like, expecting the system to help them. And it's like, then, like, you're so much for the people, but then you're not willing to put that work. So that's where I'm always I'm questioning this thing about the left. They want the system so that they don't have to do the work, when the right wants to do the work. And so I was reading this article that was talking about also how the left and the right, they volunteer for different things. So the right tend to volunteer more on, like, food, like, how do you call, like, charities are related to food, church, helping people. And the people on the left tend to actually volunteer for non-profits in the arts and that. So, and that was, like, my experience, and it was interesting.
Those are excellent points. There are absolutely excellent points. And, when the left refers to they want the government to take care of anything, they think of this government as some magical entity in the sky. And for the government to take care of people, somebody has to do the work. All right. And the problem with the collective, like Zoran Mandami said, Zorhan, I believe, Mandami said, we're all about the collective. The rugged individualism is an archaic thing. If you've ever got a group of people together to work on a project, okay, say like 50 people, okay, and you have to get something done, it's 10% doing 90% of the work, okay? That's the way collectives work. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm saying you need to keep in mind that the human soul because when you actually work in companies, that's what you see, what you just said. So yeah, and also I have to say, like, they keep talking about Europe, but even in Europe, like in Italy, you don't expect the government to pay for everything. Like, you don't expect them to pay for the bus. You have free healthcare, but even that, like, it's so faulty and everything. You're still paying a copay anyway, and you still go to the private sector anyway. So that's a bigger conversation. But even like in Europe, people are not expecting the government to take care of them so much. So they would just expect if you're poor, the government should take care of you. But not if you make like 140,000, like many of Mamdani's voters. Now you should get free buses because 140,000 for you, it's not enough to have a good life. So we have to keep this thing in mind.
Well, I think some eyebrows were raised. I believe the lady's name is Sia Weaver. She was a tenant advocate for Zoran. And she made the comment that this thing about home ownership, is a flexible thing. We have to rethink about, that home ownership is actually a sign of white supremacy.
Yeah.
And I've come to find out, if these reports are true, that her parents live in $1 million house. And it's always these privileged people who complain the most about privilege. That's what.
Yeah. I mean, Mamdani, that's what it is. Like his parents, his father is a professor at Columbia. His mother is a famous filmmaker. They sold also a house, an apartment in Manhattan for like $1,500,000, I think, recently. He has a villa in Uganda. He had 3 weddings. So he married in New York, he married in Uganda, and he married in Dubai. So he's not a poor guy. He was paying like rent stabilized. It was in a rent stabilized apartment, and he was paying like $2,100 per month, and he was making $140,000 a year with his salary, and then the salary of his wife, who is like a filmmaker, and also we don't know how much money she has, but sounds like she's probably pretty rich. So. Yeah, that's where it's the hypocrisy. Like, you say you're against rich people, but then you fall for the one that tells you what you want to hear, even if they're the same people that you hate. So, and that's where my concern, that's what I wanted with my documentary, to get people to question narratives. Don't just fall for someone because it's like the new shiny object, just because someone tells you something. Don't believe that. Just like do critical thinking. So.
Yes. Sara, it's been an absolute joy talking to you. I hope you know you're absolutely welcome again on the program anytime you wish. We've been talking to Sara, and I want to try the last name again, Alessandrini. Okay, I got it. Awesome. Why don't you tell folks where people can find you, where you can find your docu-series, your social media, all that stuff?
All right. So the series is on streaming platforms. So it's on Apple TV, it's on Tubi, YouTube, Zumo, and Google Play. So you can go to either of those. It's called This Is What New Yorkers Say. So you can either like just watch an episode. There are like different topics in each episode. So don't feel like you're obligated to watch the full thing. But yeah, you could watch the full thing. And the website is called thisiswhatnewyorkerssay.com. Very simple, and you can find information there about me, about the series. You can find the links to watch it from there too. You can find the social media. So I'm on X, Facebook, and Instagram, all the places.
Awesome. That is absolutely fantastic. I would encourage people to search you out, because a lot of what you talked about today, the way you communicated, is very much present in your filmmaking. Fantastic perspectives. Love it. My name is Billy Dees, and you can find the Billy Dees Podcast on all the major podcast platforms. We have it's more than a 10-year history now. So we're real easy to find on any and all of the major podcast platforms. You can also find me on X, which at one time was Twitter, and at Billy Dees on X. And that's kind of like my social media home. And I know that X and the former Twitter have gone through a lot of changes, but it is still very real time, very trending, and news often breaks on X as much as it is reported. It actually happens on X, I meant to say, as much as it is reported. So it's kind of like an excellent thing for podcasting and X. Those two seem to go together, for me anyway, very well. There's also links in my bio, real easy to find. If you just Google me, Billy Dees, you can find my link tree and all that other kind of stuff to find me. Thank you so much, Sara. You've been a delight to have on here. So insightful. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. You're very welcome. And thank you. And do check out the Billy Dees Podcast. Check out our playlists. We have all kinds of different types of content. We're not just a one-trick pony. So lots of different content on there. Do check us out. Thank you very much for listening. And we will talk to you again very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees Podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @BillyDees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees Podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees Podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.